Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, November 15th, 2018. This is your Cup of Jones. The full intro did not play. Doesn't matter if you wipe your PC, build it from the ground up, reinstall XSplit, bring in the MP4 on its own, brand new project. This is the first thing that we have streamed from this new computer. And then load up that MP4, test it a bunch of times, and then you finally click on it, and it's like, right at the last second, that's when you wanted that intro to start, right? And you're like, it's about a 10-second intro. It'd be great if you could go back to the beginning of the intro before you're going to play that. But I'm salty when things don't work. I'm salty when things, just like our PC. We are having some PC issues. Let me know if everything looks and sounds okay. This is going to be an extremely short episode of Cup of Jones, a very brief episode. I'm very tired. We were up last night fixing PC stuff, and there's lots of stuff going on, but I really wanted to make sure to come out today specifically to not skip this show, to not skip it this week, because there's two fun things that I want to make sure that you know. Is the audio off? Oh, the sync is up. All right, if the sync's off, we're dealing with it. I'm sorry. I got to move forward. I set everything to the settings before. I ran tests, looked okay to me. I'm moving on. March 23rd, Saturday, March 23rd, will be the meetup for our third anniversary. So I believe this is as early as we have announced it so far. We have definitely not given, I think, people enough time to make travel arrangements if they want to be hanging out with us on the 23rd or on our anniversary. Of course, our actual anniversary is on March 21st, but if you want to hang out with us at our third anniversary event. We don't have an official title for it yet. Our last two events were called Easy Allies in Concert. You can go to our YouTube channel if you want to check those out. But if you want to just join us for the first time, or if you want to just put that in your calendar to make sure to watch it live, we'll be doing a live stream the evening of Saturday, March 23rd, 2019. We will be returning to Tommy's Place at USC, which is where we were last year. That is located on the campus of USC, which is located just south of downtown Los Angeles. So again, if you want to make travel plans, that is around the neighborhood that we are going to be in, and we would love to have you, whether online or not. And that is very exciting. The other exciting thing is that as of late last night or early this morning, we put in a second offer. Well, not a second offer, a first offer on a new property, but the second actual offer that we have done here at Easy Allies on a property. We have found a place that vastly exceeds our expectations. It's really, really exciting. We checked it out last week. And then you got to put all your ducks in a row and write a letter saying, hi, we're Easy Allies. Here's our weird company. And we would very, very much like to be in this space. So somebody in chat says, is this the one? I mean, we thought the last place was going to be the one. But I want to describe really, really quickly the difference between these two different spaces that we have put offers in on. So this is the second space that we actually put an offer in on, which means we are telling the owner of the building, we are telling the landlord, we are interested. Here's all of our financial information. Here's who we are. Here's what we plan to do with the space. The place that we looked at before was a former production studio. So that's what was really exciting about it, that it was soundproofed. It was in a good area of town, and we weren't going to be making a lot of noise, not only for our neighbors, but we weren't going to be making a lot of noise in between the separate rooms. And so one of the exciting things that we want to try to achieve here with the new studio is to have two viable shooting spaces, and to potentially have those spaces be far apart enough from each other that we can shoot two things at the same time, possibly streaming one thing, shooting a show, or vice versa. And we are definitely going to be able to do it in this place. So this place is more of an office environment. It is not so much it's not a former studio. You walk in and it would seem kind of like a small startup company could be in there, maybe a tech company or a law firm or something. But there are 6 different rooms in this space. Lots of great modern amenities, locks on every door, new security system, and fresh paint, hardwood floors. Like I was very excited when I walked in there, because when I looked at the floor plan, I was like, there's no way this thing is going to be big enough. 6 rooms for the price that we can afford. There's no way that this is going to work out. And went in there, and I just kept waiting for that other shoe to drop, because I'm like, this is amazing. This is exactly what we need. There are 2 spaces. The biggest space, obviously, would be this setup, would be a desk setup for that new stage. And then I'm getting just excited just thinking about it. And then there's a room down at the end of the hallway. So we talked previously on this show about potentially turning a hallway in the new studio into Hall of Greats. This new office space, if we were to get this, is just one big hallway, and all of the rooms go off the same direction off this gigantic hallway. And so we would be able to turn that hallway into a literal Hall of Greats. And I want to let all of you know about it, but I don't want to talk about it too much because, again, this is now completely out of our hands. We are now pleading to this landlord, and this landlord is friends with our real estate agent. They have worked together in the past, so hopefully we get some cred there. Hopefully we get our foot in the door, and this can work out. So fingers crossed. So some exciting things to look forward to, potentially getting the studio, locking that down soon, and our 3rd anniversary show, which is coming up, as always, at the end of March, specifically March 23rd, 2019. We hope you will either join us in person or join us online, and we will have more specific details about, of course, when that starts, what you can expect at the show, and when you can show up if we're doing any other events that weekend. But we will definitely be doing an event that night, Saturday night, March 23rd. Can you send the landlord flowers? Yeah. Just, I don't know if I need everyone in our community harassing somebody to try to get that studio space, but I have good vibes about it. And again, it reminds me of this house that I acquired that we've been doing Easy Allies in. The very first property that we looked at seemed perfect, and I would much rather be in this space than the other space that we put an offer on. I would be happy in both spaces, but I think it is fortuitous, and I'm excited to show it to you. I'm excited to talk more about it and showcase all of the fun stuff that we can do in the space. But I'm not going to go on and on and on about it because I have no power now. I've relinquished my power to other people, and if things do work out and we are chosen and we do get the studio space, all of you will be the first to hear about it. So here we go. Moving on. Yeah, I don't have a lot of news right off the bat. I have a Just Cause 4 preview going up today. I sat down. It was pretty much just this with Just Cause B-roll. It's a very similar shot. And I cut that last night, and that will hopefully be going up today. A little bit late on the embargo for that one. You might have seen a lot of other people talking about their experience with Just Cause 4. Played the same demo, had a wonderful time, and I'm excited to talk to you and give you my impressions about it. Also, be sure you tune in next Monday morning. It'll be episode 5, the final episode of Box Peak Season 1. Kyle Bossman will be here on this desk, and we'll be joined by my lovely wife, Amanda, and the two of them will talk about their experiences with Season 1. Specific details about that episode, but Mr. Kyle Bossman's been doing live Q&As for each new episode, and this will be the first Q&A that Amanda will be on. So if you want to save all your specific Geordie questions or VO questions, Takia Chill questions, or if for some reason you have missed Box Peak, there are 4 episodes. Each episode keeps getting better than the last, and I'm very excited to see. I don't remember all the details. Every single time a new episode comes up, I'm like, oh, right, I totally forgot about that part. And I don't remember all the details from episode 5, but there's one detail in particular that I'm very excited for people to check out, and I think it's a good way to wrap up what was not intended to be the first season of Box Peak, but it's fun to know that I'm going to be sad when episode 5 is over, because just like you, I want to crave more Box Peak. I'm in the same position that you are. I don't get to see these episodes until they air, and so I'm excited to see episodes 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, but we are getting 5 Monday morning. And join us. Only 5 pages of questions. I have 2 pages of business questions, 3 pages of business questions, 2 pages of personal questions, and then we are out. Like I said, I have more stuff to do today. Our PC is acting weird, and so we need to possibly take it in or diagnose that. But I was cutting the Just Cause 4 preview last night. I look over at Ian, and Ian had a migraine and was trying to figure it all out. So fun PC issues. Apologies if there's a delay today. But I will fix that for next time. It's so weird, again, because I do an audio test with an XSplit just to make sure everything is synced up, and it looks great. And then I type in the same settings, so that's always been. So, tech, what are you going to do? Alexander Zirianov. During the first year of Easy Allies, you edited almost every review. Then you shifted your editing attention to the Souls retrospective, but once it was done, you didn't return to editing reviews because, besides rare exceptions. Why are you not interested in editing now as much as you were before? I am always interested in editing. I very much enjoy editing. I think maybe it was a matter of principle or pride. I don't know why I cut all of those reviews. I think in the early days of Easy Allies, I wanted morale to be high. I wanted people to enjoy their jobs. I wanted people to focus on what types of shows that they would want to do. We were repeating a lot of the shows we brought over from Game Trailers, but we were also producing brand new shows. Ian was doing lots of experimentation with Easy Update. Don was trying to figure out his place in the company, and he was also working on Huber Syndrome and helping edit special features every now and then. And so I wanted them to focus on the things that they were focusing on, and I really wanted to establish the review format and what reviews were going to be like at Easy Allies compared to Game Trailers. And then, as you point out, Alexander, when I moved on to the Souls Retro, I needed help, and Don and Ian stepped in. And so I think once you start delegating, once you start realizing that other people can come in and fill those roles, then it wasn't a matter of not being interested in editing anymore or not enjoying editing. I love cutting reviews. It's just a matter of when I would see that I might not necessarily have enough time to do stuff, that I would then pass that on to somebody else. And it's a good feeling. It's tough for me sometimes to delegate because I want to do everything myself if I have a particular idea of how things should be. And it can be kind of scary sometimes to be like, yeah, I'll just completely hand off that project to somebody else can do it. And I think once I was forced to do that working on the Souls Retro, I felt how good it felt sometimes to pass on a project and focus on something else and not necessarily work on a review. And so as certainly Easy Allies has moved on and my job responsibilities have evolved into all sorts of crazy directions, it's certainly appreciated when Ian and Don can step in and cut reviews. So I'm very interested in editing. I'll tell you what, I'm not interested in editing another retrospective for a long time, that's for sure. Straw Hat Ninja, I know you've talked about bringing on more allies in the past, but I was just wondering if you guys are looking at expanding, or has anyone reached out to you asking to join? I know with you guys getting a studio and possibly getting more shows, it would probably help to have more staff, but obviously that means more money is needed as well. Not in the budget. Every time this topic comes up at a meeting, we all kind of nod and say, like, yeah, it'd be great if we had a community manager. Yeah, it'd be great if we had another editor. One prospect that's interesting with this new studio is, again, this new studio that we do not have yet, that we're just putting an offer in on, is there's 6 rooms. We could easily get away with 4, maybe 5, which would possibly open up a 6th room to maybe have another to sublease, to maybe have another creative person, possibly an editor or designer or something, come in and work on their own stuff in our space, and then rent out that space from us. And so we'd be making a little extra money on the side. It could possibly bring in another editor that could work on their projects and then help us work on Easy Ally stuff. Again, we're just spitballing. This is theorizing about a space we don't technically have yet, and so you can imagine how far that is down the road as far as becoming a reality. But I think the main thing that I will say again and again whenever the topic of hiring people comes up, we know how hard we work at Easy Allies for what we make, and a lot of us have worked freelance in the past. A lot of us have worked at various media companies with various responsibilities for various salaries, and I think we are wary to give someone a position when we know deep down they are not being paid as much as they should be paid. And I think that is the issue, the benefit of bringing somebody on and paying them what we think is fair pay and how that fits into the budget. And certainly right after we get a studio and are going to be spending all of the money that we've been saving over the last couple months on sets and new equipment and investing in this studio, it is not going to be the time to then further invest on bringing in other employees. But studio is a big goal. When that studio goal is behind us, we will have new goals, and some of those will be reflected specifically on Patreon goals on our Patreon and our new goal tiers. But some of those will also just be mental goals, personal goals, emotional goals, and you could probably put that on the list. So to specifically answer your first question, Straw Hat Ninja, we are not looking at expanding our employee roster at the moment, and plenty of people have reached out asking to join. I have a big long list of in an email folder on Gmail of a lot of people that have submitted their resumes and said in the past. And it's interesting, even when I say, it'd be nice to maybe get somebody like that someday, but it's not something we can afford now. It's not something that we're looking for right now. Please do not send in submissions. I'll get at least 2, most of the time on Twitter, for people just like, hey, just reaching out. I used to be community manager for this video game or this company, and I would love to work with Easy Allies as well. Hey, Brandon, can the 6th room be a final Bossman room? No, it cannot. Kyle Armstrong. I went in that room and I looked around and I'm like, it's just not. It's not a Bossman room. Kyle Armstrong. In last week's Cup of Jones, you mentioned how you guys aren't actively doing stuff to keep you above the 50K goal, primarily because it's review season at the moment. I'm sure you've talked about it plenty of times before. Kyle even mentioned it on one of his post-Box Peak streams. But how much have you considered bringing back the Final Bossman, maybe as a patron exclusive? I'm sure that if you did, for example, as the 60K goal, you'd reach the 50K goal that you need for the studio far more easily. Boy, is this question well-timed. It is such a short episode of Cup of Jones that I felt it was okay to include this question, but for many of you who have been around for a long, long time here on Patreon or have watched many episodes of Cup of Jones, you're very familiar with this question, and you're very familiar with this answer. First of all, it is completely up to Kyle Bossman on whether the Final Bossman shall return. Second of all, I have never heard in 2.5 years of operating Easy Allies a moment, a fleeting half second where Kyle seemed interested at all in returning to the Final Bossman. The Final Bossman was a product of what Kyle's job was at Game Trailers. Final Bossman was basically his main thing that he could focus on, and your enjoyment of that show while you look back and think like, man, that show was really funny. Man, those skits were really well conceived. The writing on that was really sharp. His performance was really focused. That's because he had the time to do that. And there's two major things getting in the way of his work on Final Bossman now. One is the continued growth and the focus of our podcast, which he is the moderator of, and of course, Box Peak and other things that he is involved with. Kyle's very involved with group streams now. He plans a lot of the events. He's very much behind the organizing of things like Hall of Greats and tournaments, and he also streams a lot. Put together special shows like Bosman v. Wozniak, and also. An interesting thing happened when we switched over to Easy Allies, that some things were copied over, in a sense, from shows that we used to do with different branding and different names. And some of the stuff we did mostly out of obligation because we felt it would be beneficial to our Patreon. It was something that our audience wanted to see. And other things we were happy not necessarily doing anymore. One of those was Countdown for a long time, and we wanted to get to a specific financial tier before that would be viable for us. We've hit that. We're now doing countdowns. Very fun countdown coming up. A very unusual countdown, the next countdown that we're going to be doing from ones that we've done previously. I'm curious to see what people think of it. And Final Bossman's one of those things where, I mean, his name is in the title. So if you think about doing Final Bossman and you go to Kyle and you say, Kyle, what do you think about doing Final Bossman? And Kyle says, Brandon, I really don't want to do it. I don't want to focus on it right now. I don't have the time to make it the thing I want to do. I don't want to retread something that I've done before. I want to move ahead, try new things, and I'm very happy with the way Easy Allies is right now. And the TV just turned off for some reason. Maybe the PC went to sleep. I don't know. There's all sorts of fun new PC settings that we have to deal with. So there you go. So that is that common reaction that I get from Kyle. Think about that. Contemplate your words and deeds as I go and wake this computer back up. Asleep? Yes, it's asleep. Come on, computer. Wake up, computer. There we go. There we're back. All right. It's a short Cup of Jones today, but not short enough for the computer to not fall asleep. I'm still streaming at least. Yeah, I think the monitors just fell asleep. Chris Snow, I would very much like EZA to put out a more balanced schedule of reviews. I'm sure Bloodworth is going to weigh in on this. What I mean by this is don't drop 2 or 3 reviews in the same day and then nothing for weeks. Is there any reason why there hasn't been more of a balance and why you wouldn't want to spread them out more? I hear what you're saying, and maybe there would be times when we could delay a review, depending on whether it's past embargo. We certainly want to get reviews out as soon as we possibly can, and so sometimes there will be something that will be finished ahead of time that is ready for embargo, that is sitting on our YouTube channel for a couple of days waiting for that date to come up. Reviews go up as soon as they're done. We will never delay a review. There you go. From Daniel Bloodworth, we will never delay a review. So a lot of times you'll have a review that is done but has to wait for embargo, and then you'll have a review that is not done, and then the moment it is done, it's ready to go. And if an embargo went up that morning and the other review is ready, we're not going to hold on that review. We're going to get all of that stuff up as soon as possible. And then when you say, hey, and then nothing happens for weeks, that is kind of on us, I guess, a little bit, but a lot of that also has to do with review schedules. If nothing is necessarily exciting anybody or people are working on personal projects, then we're not going to do a review for the sake of doing a review. We do reviews when someone on our editorial staff, who is of the 6 of us that do reviews, is interested in working on something, and then they work on that, and then they produce that review. So we would never force somebody or tie somebody's hand behind their back and be like, you have to review this, and that review is going to go up at a very specific time. Sometimes we're lucky, in the case of when I worked on Spider-Man this year and Red Dead Redemption 2, that I was able to hit that embargo and put enough time aside to work on stuff. And then you get some instances where we don't get the code until the game comes out, and so we are, or it's a weird game like Fallout 76, or has some kind of online component that we want to test out. I know Blood can attest to that with Forza Horizon 4, and so sometimes it's surprisingly difficult to regulate a review schedule, given all the other things that we produce here at Easy Allies, given all the other random events that come up throughout the industry. It can be frustrating when you're working on a review and then like there's a Nintendo Direct, or there's a Microsoft event or a Sony event, or some sort of announcement, or you might be on the podcast that week. We've had lots of shuffling. No Pokemon until tomorrow. Yeah, cool. I don't know, Blood, if we specifically were going to say that, but yeah, we're not going to get Pokemon Let's Go until tomorrow. So we're going to hustle that review out, and if Damiani's going to work very hard on that review, and when he gets that review done, we're just not going to wait, and sometimes that goes up. For instance, I had something that I wanted to post. Trailer Jones. Trailer Jones that I wanted to post, and I finished it, of course, right when the new Box Peak episode came up, and then Frame Trap was posted on the site, and so I'm like, okay, I don't want to dump all of these shows on, so I waited until the next morning to put that out. So we do delay things to keep a more regular schedule on the site, but reviews are not in that, and I couldn't have said it better than Blood saying it himself. We will never delay a review. So apologies, we don't spread that stuff out more. I imagine that can be frustrating, Chris, to get all of that at once, but understand it's in the effort of getting that to you as soon as we possibly can. Brandon K. Gann, while you were giving your answer to the GOTY question last week, it occurred to me the Hall of Greats stream is kind of like a very condensed, much more structured, that I've seen, oratory practice for GOTY deliberation. So I have a two-part question. One, do you see that stream as a quarterly practice for the GOTY stream to keep up the debate skills in shape? Sure. And two, are there other instances you can think of where this concept of a stream, game, video show, etc. can also serve as a means to improve another avenue? Sure, I think group streams in general. I think group streams are very interesting because we're all together. And when you're on a podcast and you're having a debate, a lot of times, even if you have 3 people on a podcast, 4 or 5, the people that aren't necessarily directly involved in that debate can kind of sit back and watch things, and it's usually happening between one person or, one or another person. And I know that at least every ally has at least one group stream that they did not enjoy. That the group stream ended, and that ally said, hey, something happened on this stream that kind of frustrated me. I know one that I had was, man, I can't remember what it was, what VR game I was playing. I was playing something in PlayStation VR, and I had the PlayStation 4 controller in my hand, and there was something I didn't know how to do in the game, and I asked the people outside. So I have 8 people laughing at me, and I am blind, so I'm in the with the blast shield down, I can't see anything. So I have the PSVR helmet on, and I don't have the controls in front of me, and it's not explaining the controls, and I didn't know how to just do one button. And I think Kyle was at Bridge Crew. I love that people know this. I love that people are like, oh, that was Bridge Crew. They're like, I don't remember it. That we do so much stuff at Easy Allies. I don't remember this. And I was like, just tell me the button. Just look it up on the internet right now and tell me what to do. And the thing is, I know I wasn't watching the stream. All of you were. So you're like, oh, they were. I didn't know that. No one said, I'm looking it up, Jones. So as far as I knew, nobody cared. No one was looking it up. The enjoyment was more, let's watch Jones squirm so we can make fun of Jones. And then Bossman put it on, and Bossman jumped in and pressed the right button right away, just because of intuitiveness. And was like, oh, it's this button, Jones. It's so simple. And I wanted to cleave Bossman's head off. I wanted to take a baseball bat, remove Bossman's head from his neck, and hoist it up so that his last living moment, the last 20 seconds of life before it drains away from a severed head, that he would look into the camera at our community and recognize his horrible words and deeds. I was incensed. I was really, 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 really angry. I'll never forget that moment. And it happens, and we've all been there because it's really hard to communicate technical frustrations that you're having in a way that will be playful, to everybody in a way that, we're having technical issues today, but, hopefully we're all family and friends here. And you understand that me setting up the stream by myself, I'm doing the best I can. But issues are going to come up. Tech issues are going to come up. Miscommunication is going to come up. Obviously, there is a tete-a-tete. There is a lively debate that happens with every group stream, whether we're talking about specifically the game that we're playing or anime or whatever, or some latest episode of Vikings that Huber wants us to know about. And every group stream is a test for us to manage that conversation, for us to be honest with each other, be communicative, but also to present ourselves within the best light, and to show that no matter what disagreements that we have, no matter who is good at what game or who wins the Hall of Greats or who wins a tournament, that we can. The main point of this is for us to get together, enjoy each other's company, and hopefully create entertaining products for you to enjoy. And that ultimately is the end goal. And so us being together in a group, basically improving, having no idea what is going to happen, who is going to, what games are going to be inserted into the Hall of Greats, who's going to win a tournament, what is going to happen when we play Hitman 2 like we did on Tuesday. And so it's great to finish a group stream and kind of look back and be like, what worked, what didn't, what games make good group streams, what conversations could have been done differently. And so I think that reflects in a lot of the stuff that we do in the Q&As that we have, in the meetings that we have. All of these are great opportunities to understand the temperaments of each ally, what frustrates them, and what we can do to either stop those things from happening in the first place, or if there is a miscommunication, working things out after the fact. Matt Bolenbach, will your desire for a more polished GOTY stream result in less of the deliberations being included? I think that's impossible to say. I don't know, Matt. I can understand having the event more planned out, predetermined categories and nominees for said categories, for example, but I do hope the main deliberations are still a bit cacophonous. I hope so, too. That's the thing about GOTYs. We can't promise that. I can't promise you that there will be a lively debate. We might all just throw our hands up and say God of War, and then we're done. So if we all agree on something, then there's not much of a debate. I think what you saw last year was a lot of conversations that were reserved, that were saved for GOTYs. So there were people that felt very strongly about one game versus another, but we didn't really get into the specifics beforehand because we didn't want to try to force someone's hand or try to change somebody's opinions before they go into GOTY. We want people to be fresh, to have their own strong opinions they've built up throughout the year. And so I can guarantee we will all have that going into GOTYs this year, but I can't guarantee that we're all going to fight. Like, this isn't a reality show. Like, we don't need the drama for GOTYs. It might be there. What the GOTY celebration is basically going to be is that window opening up into you seeing the deliberation process. But if you were to look at the top 10 countdown process, we just had a countdown meeting this last Monday. We picked the next 3 countdowns we're going to do, and some of those go by really quickly. Some of those are very contentious. Sometimes it's, numbers 8, 9, and 10, and the PC just fell asleep again. Sometimes it's like 8, 9, and 10 that will be a big fight. Sometimes it's 1 and 2 that'll be a big fight. Sometimes number 10 is a big fight because we're trying to figure out what is actually going to make it in the list and what's going to be pushed off. And so that's the trick. It's the kind of thing where people asked for GOTY deliberations for a long time, and I've said something like this before, that people really want to go to deliberations, but then you see them and they're like, oh, that's kind of boring. And like, it might be boring. It might not be exciting. Good points might not be brought up. Like, we're going to structure it in a way so that there's no downtime, so we're not waiting for something to happen or we don't have the information in front of us. We're going to organize it a little bit more beforehand. We just weren't sure how much of the process people wanted to see. So we're going to do that process before and specifically get into the deliberations. But if we all agree on the same thing, it could be a very boring show, and I don't want that to happen, but I wouldn't feel bad or have regrets after the fact about doing it because, again, we don't know how votes are going to go. We don't know how deliberations are going to go beforehand. I'll move that. I can't see chat. Apologies. I'm going to get through a couple more questions before I wake the PC back up. Terrence Karen, I was wondering about one of the first questions in this past week's Cup of Jones. Wouldn't you say we want to keep the 50K goal because it's the comfortable number for us to pay for rent and pay everyone for their work? It should make people realize once you get the studio, nothing guarantees you can keep up the Patreon audience. You can keep it if the Patreon audience shrinks or donations lessen. Saying it's a symbol of what we've done is fine, but there's still a reality behind that goal. It's not like buying a camera. It's a needed steady stream of money. That doesn't prevent you from creating exciting goals above that, but that should stay as a warning of what it takes to get that studio level quality. Correct. And I think that comes into play much more when we have the actual studio that we can communicate that. Right now, we are in a stronger financial position than we have ever been at Easy Allies. All of this money so once we hit that 50K goal, we then budgeted out how much we were willing to pay on rent and how much we were willing to pay on utilities. And then we subtracted that number from 50K, and then that number that was left became our operating budget. So if we want to save up for things like the concert or special events that we do or a piece of equipment, it has to come out of that money and not the studio money. Our salary has to come out of that money. And then anything above that, including money that we've made past 50K, has gone into the studio budget. So that studio budget will go toward new set pieces, new furniture, new amenities. We're going to need a new big fridge or mini fridge, because I'm keeping that fridge because that's my fridge. So there's things that we have to pick up, and I don't think we're going to be spending all of that money, but you never know what kind of resources. We're really not going to know that stuff until we actually move into the space. And so as far as rent is concerned, we will have the rent. We will have that money when it comes time to pay. Right now we could pay several months rent, just on the money that we have saved. And so I think the language that you're talking about, and it completely makes sense. I think we need to shift gears and start saying things like that when we actually move into the studio space. And what I don't want to do now is have that be a broken record. Be like, everybody, this is really, really dire. We need to get above that level. We need to stay at that level, or financially this is not going to work. I communicated it that way because I wanted people to understand we are doing the work to get into the space. You have already done a tremendous amount of work, and I don't want you to feel that work is not being put forth somewhere else, that you're not, seeing that budget, that money that's coming in, that money is being saved, that money is going to be spent directly on the studio, that money is being budgeted specifically for studio expenses. And when we move into the studio, you will see the language change considerably of, okay, now you're not going to, we're going to keep that 50K goal, but you're not going to see us talking about that 50K goal. We're specifically going to be focusing on full playthrough Fridays. As I mentioned before, we're going to be shooting a temp episode of Huber's Game Show. We were talking about it last night, actually. We were setting up the PC, talking about specific details and possibly how it could fit into the studio space and how we could rearrange it. And there's a lot of fun working parts about how Huber's Game Show works. And so we're going to get into that dialogue, start talking about those things specifically once there isn't a lot to talk about with the studio, because the studio will hopefully one day become that reality. So fingers crossed. Try not to think about it too much, but it's a great concern, and I think it's a question of not that we shouldn't talk like that, because I think we should, Terrence, but when we start shifting that conversation away from let's maintain that 50K goal because we need to pay that rent to we can pay the rent, we're financially fine, don't worry about it. Let's talk about these goals because now we're in the studio. Let's talk about the fun things that we can do with the studio, possibly adding more goals on top of that. Minimic, in regards to the studio search, have you given your real estate agent any sort of estimated minimum measurements? Like, we need at least this much space to do these things in, so don't waste my time showing me properties that at least don't meet those requirements. Minimic, I love the pushiness of your question. Don't waste my time. Have you told your real estate agent not to waste your time? Yeah, that was like the first thing that we mentioned to this real estate agent and the one we had before. This real estate agent is so much better than the one that we had before, or at least is just more interested in getting us a space. I don't know. The real estate agent we had before might have been fine, but things were not moving at a steady clip. And yes, basically how we figured that out is this garage is just a little bit under 500 square feet. And so I just doubled it. I figured we want 2 rooms. They don't have to be this space, but if we want to double up our production potential with the new studio, then we're looking at least 1,000 square feet with the space that we are putting an offer in on today is much bigger than that. But that was, definitely the bare minimum. 2 separate rooms. I think those are the big requirements. Not to mention other big requirements. It's got to have really good internet. It's got to be in a reasonably good part of town, and it's got to have air conditioning. Air conditioning, extremely important, and this place does. We walk into this new studio, and we just see the vents. It's like, oh yes, we can make it cold. Rudy M, why did you stop saying you're a subscriber now? I miss it. Would you even consider doing a Your Subscriber Now event stream to encourage memberships? We can maybe bring it back for a drive that we do in the future. But we got rid of it because we were just doing it a lot, and it was very distracting. Right now, it's nice to tell people that thank you very much for subbing or resubbing or gifting subs or being a part of Easy Allies on Twitch and supporting us there. But that is something that 1 or 2 people can do, and sometimes when those events happen, the person streaming the game or somebody who is talking to the audience is more specifically focused on something, and we didn't want that constant interruption of the events. It was fun, though, and I missed that song, and it was one of my dreams for the concert when we first did the concert was to write like a full rock song. You're a subscriber now rock song, but never got around to it. So yeah, apologies, but I'll tell you this. We've had lots of meetings and discussed lots of different topics about things that we could improve or produce or bring back here at Easy Allies, and I don't recall any ally at any point saying that they would request bringing back You're a Subscriber Now. But we appreciate any and all subscribers on Patreon and, of course, on Twitch. Let's wake this computer back up. Talk amongst yourselves. There's no jazz. It's dead air. And I realize people that are on PCs, people that use Windows, are like, Jones, you just go into preferences and you turn that off. And it's just like, I'm streaming a live show right now. I'm going to finish up this show, and then I'll deal with that later. No editorial today. Again, it's going to be a quick episode. We're almost done with business questions. Mr. Pants, Master Pants. I thought up an idea for a special group stream. Bring in 9 kids and partner them up with the allies for a 2v2 tournament of some kind. I imagine it'll be similar to the scene in Kindergarten Cop when Arnold yells at the kids to shut up! At some point, Huber will probably say chaos. Be sure to have just one edgy teen in the group. Only joking with the description, mostly. But the suggestion still stands. What do you think? Will you add it to your takeaways? I did add it to my takeaways. I will consider any and all potential group stream ideas. Obviously, there are waivers. Obviously, we, sometimes swear like sailors, even though we try not to. Obviously, there will be potentially games we could play that would not be good for kids. One thing that I think I brought this up one time, and Kyle Bossman and other allies gave me a very disturbed look, but I think it was in the Q&A, and I was like, I don't see what's so creepy about that. I think that would be hilarious. But I would love to, because I am the oldest ally by a few years. And so it's funny sometimes when the guys will talk about like, well, in the 90s when I was 10 years old, and I'm like, I was a teenager in the 90s, but whatever. And I would love to do a video that's like teenage me. So I hire a teenager that looks like me, an actor, and then that actor is dealing with 8 kids and has to like babysit them or something, or like it's like an Adventures in Babysitting episode of Easy Update or something, and then you cast like 10 to 6-year-old versions of all of the other allies. I think that'd be hilarious. Apparently, a lot of the allies thought that would be incredibly disturbing, but I think that would be so great. But extremely expensive. And if you recall back at GT, we actually had a student program where a wonderful GT fan named Christopher McClung, I believe is his last name, is a teacher at a local school in Los Angeles, and he brought his students by that were doing their own gaming program. And I thought it would be fun just to talk to talk to teenagers, talk to high school kids, ask them what games that they were playing and what they thought about some events that had come up that year. And I think getting a younger, certainly because, you can see the grays, like I'm going to be 40 in January. So I think it would behoove us to get a younger audience more involved in Easy Allies, maybe not on a ongoing basis, maybe just doing one crazy group stream is a way to test that. But Bloodwood says, "LOL, yeah, figuring out that I was writing about games before Ben could actually read was a weird one." So That would be fun. I would love a Little Rascals version of Easy Allies. Linus, now that I've finished Red Dead Redemption 2, when can we expect a spoiler mode? Do you want to wait till multiple allies have finished it and y'all have enough time to do one? P.S. The game really grew on me. At Chapter 1, I would have given it at most a 7.5. Ouch. But now that I've seen the full story and lived in the world a bit more, I give it a 9. Your review convinced me to give it a try and stick with it, so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for you sticking with it, Limus. I'm glad you enjoyed it. A 9 is so rough. What do you want? What did you want that game to do that it didn't do? To each their own. Yes, we are recording the spoiler mode tomorrow. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., Mr. Brad Ellis and Mr. Michael Huber are going to be sitting down at this desk with me in my red shirt and my cowboy hat, and we're going to talk about Red Dead for a very long period of time. I actually had a special request from Huber that I've never done, but Huber messaged me on Slack, and he's like, hey, do you have a rundown for the spoiler mode? And I was like, a rundown for spoiler mode? We never do rundowns for spoiler mode. I'll write notes down, but no, I don't have like an official rundown. And Huber wanted a rundown, so I'm going to be typing that up today, this afternoon, and then sending that up to Huber. Obviously, it's going to help me. It's going to be something that I was going to do before the actual episode, but I just love Huber being like, maybe he wants to replay missions or get ready for it. Huber's excited. I'm excited. I'm very excited to talk about Red Dead. Ian is also playing it. Ben is playing it. We have other allies checking it out, but they're not going to be ready. And if you want to be ready and you want to check it out, I will try to get it done that Friday. At the latest, it'll go up the day after Saturday. But if you want to check out that spoiler mode, I need to see a 100% completion on the story. So when you boot up your progress, when you go to the progress screen and it says story on that first tab, that's got to say 100%. If it is not, you are not prepared for the spoiler mode. And even if it is, even if, say, you get 100% like right before we do the spoiler mode, keep going. There's more stuff to check out, and there's a lot of stuff at the end of that game, so... I just don't want people to think that they're ready for the spoiler mode, and then we start talking about all sorts of crazy strangers and stuff that pops up in Endgame, and they're like, wait, whoa, I didn't see any of that stuff. I am planning to spoil some things for Brad and Huber. I know I have asked them, did you do this? Did you talk to this guy? Did you go back to this town? And they were like, no. And it's like, okay, well, do that before Friday, or I'm going to tell you what's there, because I really want to talk about how extensive that game is. Stefan Bean, have you considered telling your audio podcast listeners to give you a good rating on their podcast directory like iTunes? I think this could help you find help you a lot to find some allies outside of the YouTube or Twitch crowd. #business. I will pass that on to Kyle. I wrote that into takeaways. That's an excellent suggestion. It definitely is the business portion of the Easy Allies podcast where we talk about Patreon and talk about how we operate. And that's possibly a good time for Kyle to say, oh, hey, and if you were listening to this on your various listening devices and services, it'll help us a lot to give us a good rating. Tell other people about Easy Allies. Colin Eade, I've noticed that on the main page for YouTube, Box Peak doesn't have its own playlist series at the moment. The first season is coming to an end. Do you think there should be one so people can find the episodes together? Blood can chime in on this too. I believe there is. Will I take community comments for the Red Dead Redemption 2 spoiler mode? I should probably do that tonight. That has been a suggestion in the past to take questions for that. I will throw that up tonight. I will say this, though, the more I think about that, my one ironclad rule for taking questions is Box Peak has had a playlist. It does have a playlist. We have had issues with when you... people keep not seeing playlists, and I have no idea why. So yeah, that's an issue we're trying to figure out with our YouTube page, that if you go to more playlists, you can see all of the various playlists that we have. Sometimes it shows up, sometimes it does not. If you do watch Box Peak, it's sitting on top of easyallies.com. If you do watch Box Peak episode 1, all the episode 2, 3, and 4 queue up on the right there. So there is a continuous stream of Box Peak no matter where you jump in. So it is all accessible. And of course, if we were to advertise Box Peak or try to get the word out, we would do that via that playlist. And finally, for feedback for business, Rappy. The first time posting a Cup of Jones, but just a correction from the one a couple weeks ago. Huber said he would go to the optometrist while also lumping Ben in during the Better Stuff for E3 stream due to the overwhelming support of reaching your initial goal shortly after the first hour of being live. So it was not a bet that he lost. It is goodwill that he was given from our community that he has not cashed in on, and that is unfortunate. Once we get through the review season, and once I get past some of these big projects, once we finally get that studio space, I will be pushing Michael Huber to get glasses and to watch all of those Will Ferrell films. I promise. Feedback personal. I love the pace. Only an hour so far. Started a little bit late, but
Cesar Villa, as editor-in-chief of Game Trailers in the Defy era, how responsible do you feel about the closing? Yeah, love this question. I'm not trying to say it's your fault. From what I gather, it was something pretty much bound to happen at some point. But still, you being the one in charge at the time, what was your feeling? And most importantly, has it changed from that moment to now? I don't think it's changed that much. I definitely take responsibility. The buck stops with me. I was the captain. I went down with that ship. And I don't think, I mean, for the majority of the lifespan of Game Trailers, I was not the one in charge. I was not the one running the business. I was not the one making big financial decisions. I was the creative director. I was the producer of features like retrospectives and the countdown. I did VO. Every now and then I reviewed a game. Every now and then I would sit in on awards discussions for GOTYs and stuff like that. Or I would help pitch new things like Top 100 Games or the Film Fest. Or for example, GTTV I was not involved in. Thanks for Playing, when we had that podcast, I was not involved in. Invisible Walls I was on a couple times. I was not creatively involved in the production of that show. And I'm surprised, considering how much live streaming is a part of our life now, how long it took us to get used to the concept of live streaming and building up that audience. But I think one thing there's a lot of emotions floating around here. Obviously, I mean, if you want me to feel guilty about something, I can get there real quick. There's definitely definite thoughts I've had about, could I have turned things around? Should I have turned things around? Did everything work out for the best? Is Easy Allies ultimately better than Game Trailers as far as the freedom that we have, what we're able to produce, the community that we have built, not only from the people that came with us from Game Trailers over to Easy Allies, but people that have discovered Easy Allies since. But one thing that I do want to bring out that was a very interesting moment at Game Trailers, and that was, I really started to ask pointed questions to the higher-ups at Defy and started to say, okay, what do we, because I want to keep my employees happy, I want to keep them enjoying their jobs and loving what they're doing, but obviously there are limits to that. Obviously there is a certain level of performance that we need to maintain. I was coming in and I was feeling severely outclassed by huge subscriber count, huge view count channels like Smosh and Clever and Screen Junkies. And even Warp Zone was getting just millions and millions of views for their videos. Defy was definitely chasing that viral carrot. Like, they were like, we want to have our videos blow up, and we would do retros and those would do well, and we would do countdowns and those would do well, but those were very all hands on deck type of features. And then when people would go off and do their own individual things, now a lot of you were saying, Final Bossman's really great. Why don't you bring back Final Bossman? That was something that I really loved. Final Bossman did not earn as much as Defy Media would have liked. That was not a show that they looked at as a earner. That was not a value they considered to our YouTube channel. And so at one point, I can't remember what meeting I was in or specifically what party I was talking to, but I was told that if a show did not do six figures, if we did not put up a show and have it earn 100,000 views or more, we should not be doing it. It was not a good show. It was not a good use of our time. And so reviews made sense for us to do because sometimes that happens. Sometimes we get those views. Obviously, for reviewing smaller games, that didn't happen. And so I had a meeting with the group and I brought them in and I said, according to my bosses, I should cancel Huber Hype. I should cancel Final Bossman. I should cancel Mandatory Update. I should cancel a lot of the shows that we should cancel our podcasts. Like, I should cancel the majority of the shows that we're doing. And obviously, the allies were not having that. Everyone wanted to continue to work on the stuff that we were doing. And so I think that was a really eye-opening meeting, and that was a really eye-opening time in the course of Game Trailers, and realizing we like doing what we're doing. We believe in the shows that we're doing. We trust that our community wants to see the things that we are doing. We're getting good reactions for those things. If we continue doing them, we might be out of a job. And so there were a couple potential pivot points where we could have just completely, streamlined. And the other thing that you have to remember, though, at Game Trailers that, man, we don't have to deal with now, and it is so great, is we had a horrible website for a long time. We had a website that just didn't work, and for a long time, when we were at Viacom, people were saying, no, don't go to YouTube, go to the website, because that's where we can, control the experience, that's where we make most money on ads, and we want people to be using the website, but we're not willing to put effort into money to support the website because we don't put that much money into comedycentral.com or spike.com or paramount.com. Like we don't spend that money on websites. Why would you spend that much money on websites? We're like, well, we're a media company, and so the media's got to work. The players have to work. The site has to function for people to view these videos. That message never came across. And so moving over to Defy, having Defy do their version of game trailers, having to get rid of all of these old shows, a lot of old pieces of media that people couldn't access anymore. That site had its own weird, stupid issues. And then on top of that, getting rid of like 70% of the shows that we did, I just didn't think it was going to go over well with our community. So we were in an interesting position of struggling to find growth. Defy Media, I know a lot of people are like, rag on Defy Media. I won't, because I love a lot of people that worked there. But one thing that Defy Media didn't do that was really frustrating is they never really advertised on our behalf. Like we never really got our name out there through Smosh, through Clever, through any of their other brands. And so we wanted to grow as a company, and it was difficult to do that at Defy, and especially at Viacom if we couldn't use our YouTube channel. So but I can very happily internalize all of that and blame myself for all of that as well, Cesar. But I appreciate your question, and I love questions like that. I have no problem whatsoever answering that stuff. Rudy M, how does someone know if something is a spoiler until after they have seen the content? I suppose the exact moment an event is happening, they could recall the flash of a screen in a review, and that may dampen the moment. I guess I'm just confused why someone would be agitated at a spoiler that at the time they did not know that it was a spoiler. I hear you, and we actually had a really great comment. I did had a comment last week that somebody in the YouTube comments said that the beginning of Red Dead was a spoiler, and they actually did a very good. And I think maybe it comes up again later, but we're just talking about the beginnings of games. So I won't go into details, but in my Red Dead review, I talked about the beginning of Red Dead, where you start from. And at the beginning of our God of War review, we mentioned where you start from and kind of what your mission is in God of War, what the point of the game is. And some people were frustrated because they're like, well, I didn't know that. And Sony didn't say that, or Rockstar didn't say that. Rockstar did actually. I will make that case for Rockstar. If you go to the... I don't know about Xbox, but on PlayStation, if you boot up the game, if you don't own Red Dead, if you go to the store and look at the description for the game in the store, that's what I said in the review. That just kind of like where you're starting out and what happened at the beginning of that game. And I don't remember specifically the ally that brought it up, but they did bring up some interesting points of you don't necessarily, there's a way you can word it to talk about what's going on without giving specifics of what's going on at the beginning of a review, and the PC fell asleep, so think about that for a second. But I have opinions about this because I like to watch trailers, and a lot of people that complain that trailers are super spoilery, and it pertains to what you were talking about, where how do you know it's a spoiler until you see stuff later? As an editor, somebody's been an editor for a very long time, I get stuff spoiled all the time because I love watching reviews or I love watching trailers. And I don't think I have ever seen a video review of a movie in the last 20 years. If I want to see a movie, I'll go see it. I'll see a trailer and be like, okay, I know I want to see that movie. And my brain as an editor, as a trailer lover, I will remember the whole trailer. I'll memorize it. And so I was that guy in Avengers that was like, wait a minute, that shot wasn't in that trailer. And wait a minute, like I know the part where Thanos slams his hand down and Captain America grabs it. We haven't had that yet. So even though Captain America is over on this side of the battlefield, he's got to run over to the forest because that's where he fights Thanos in that one part. Like I'm constantly reconstructing the movie, and it doesn't matter how non-spoilery you can make your trailer for your movie. If you show me something, I'm going to wait for that thing to happen. If you show a character in a life-threatening situation, but I can remember a shot from the trailer that I haven't seen yet that involves them, I know that's either a flashback or this character doesn't die. And so it'll kind of take the steam out of the movie a little bit. And so I guess that's why I'm kind of desensitized to things like this, where people are like, you spoiled something in the beginning of the review, or you had this one part that I didn't know yet. If you watch a review from Easy Allies, you will find out things you didn't know about the game. That is that phase of the marketing process for that game. Like when the embargo goes up and you tune into reviews, when you're like, well, Rockstar didn't say the beginning of the game.
it's like, well, now's the time for you to know that. These are the pieces of information that you need to know now if you're not convinced. If you're convinced and you already pre-order Red Dead, don't watch reviews. Don't spoil anything. Just go into it. But if you need a little bit more information, if you're like, I want to watch these things, it's the time for more information. It's the time to tell you a little bit more about the game, to structure it in a way to explain my experience, and that has nothing to do with being influenced by marketing or being influenced by companies or advertising. Like, this is just what I did and how I feel about this game, and new information will come to light. But yeah, I feel you, Rudy. Dominic Barlow, have you picked which song from Red Dead 2 you'll be performing at the 3rd anniversary concert? I don't know if I'll be singing at the 3rd anniversary concert. I don't know. But if I am, I probably won't sing something from Red Dead. I thought about it. I thought about doing Far Away, which Ian recently did a synth version of on Easy Update. I thought about doing that. My brother plays guitar, so I thought it might be fun if I sit down with my brother in a cowboy hat and sing that. But then again, that's not really... Yeah, I tend to do funny songs. If I do my bit again at the 3rd anniversary show, I do have a couple songs already lined up, but not from Red Dead. Morgan Mohala, I imagine there won't be a Cup of Jones on Thanksgiving Day. Hadn't thought of that. Completely understandable. Will you share some Thanksgiving stories with the community? How would you explain what Thanksgiving means originally and nowadays to the world audience? What were the best and worst Thanksgiving memories? What are you most thankful for this year? The possibility of getting a studio, I am more thankful for than anything else. It's difficult, and I will try to do this in a future editorial to explain how much that means and what a big deal that is to not only move Easy Allies into a new space, but having a creative space here. I remember when I moved out of college and I got an apartment, and I remember like moving in with friends and then being like, wait a minute, I live in Los Angeles, but I don't live at home. Like, that was crazy. I'd never had that happen before. And so I'm kind of feel the same thing here, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm working at this building in Los Angeles, but I don't have a boss. You know, like I'm working in a separate space, but this is our company. We can do, what we want to with it. And I am extremely thankful for that. What are your best and worst Thanksgiving memories? I don't know if I really have any worst Thanksgiving memories that jump to mind, but one thing that I appreciated that my family did a lot is they had guests. We would have people over for Thanksgiving that might potentially have Thanksgiving by themselves. We didn't just pick somebody up off the street. This was a family friend, and it was really nice adding them to our Thanksgiving festivities. One thing that my mom does for most Thanksgivings and Christmases is she loves to do trivia, and so she'll throughout the year collect a bunch of questions for each person and then put those into an envelope and hand those out, and then we'll go around the table and ask fun trivia questions. And it's frustrating because sometimes there are repeats, so I'll get a question like some Batman or Disneyland question, and I'm like, I know I got this before. I know the answer to this. I answered this 3 years ago, and I've completely forgotten what it is. How would you explain what Thanksgiving means originally and nowadays to the world audience? Maybe I'll save the editorial for that, but I think almost every holiday that we celebrate around the world doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as it does originally. And obviously, I invite you, if you want to learn some more, I invite you to go watch Ken Burns' The West. I think it might be still on Netflix. It's in 4x3, narrated by Peter Coyote. It's an old school documentary that Mr. Ken Burns did about the West, and especially if you're playing Red Dead, it's really fascinating to look. Red Dead deals a little bit with Native American turmoil, but it's not really covered that extensively. But it's easy to paint the picture, literally, like you see a picture of like all the pilgrims like, hey, and the Native Americans are like, here's some turkey. And you're like, oh, this is wonderful. And I think it's nice to have that image of things, to think of Thanksgiving as the time for people to come together, for us, the beginning of the holiday season, for everything starts to wind down. We obviously get more infatuated with material desires, but at the same time, we look forward to being reunited with family and friends. And even though we've kind of sugar-coated the whole relationship that we've had with Native Americans, with Americans and Native Americans over the years, it's still nice to dream and think of Thanksgiving as that ideal. But yeah, there's very little happiness going on as far as Native Americans were concerned in that time period. Steve S., having now finished Red Dead Redemption 2, I think they did a great job linking it to Red Dead Redemption 1. If I were recommending the series to a new person, I think I'd tell them to start with Red Dead Redemption 2 before playing Red Dead Redemption 1, as it fills in so many of the gaps of John Marston's past that is alluded to in the original, but never fully fleshed out. What do you think?
I think you should play Red Dead Redemption 1 first. I mean, I'm a purist in that way. As far as like how it was created, I think you should watch 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3. I think I might be contradicting myself. But I think overall, even though story-wise something should happen in one direction, you should consider the way that most people absorbed it. But one major thing, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and no spoilers, but just from a gameplay perspective, I've been thinking about that a lot. Where I was like, oh man, I bet there's a lot of people that are going to finish Red Dead 2 that didn't play Red Dead 1, and they're like, man, I want to play Red Dead 1, and then they're going to get Red Dead 1, and then the graphics aren't going to be as good, the world's not going to be as diverse, the gameplay's not going to be as fascinating, and they're going to get really frustrated and probably not play it to completion. And that's kind of the point of continuing that story, to see where all of that stuff goes, to see where all of those characters end up. And so I would recommend people check out, because it's interesting having a character like Javier Escuela, not be in Red Dead Redemption 1 that much. And then you meet Javier and you go on missions with Javier and you have lots of conversations with Javier. And all of a sudden Javier is a flesh and blood person. And then you start to think back on all the stuff that went down in Red Dead Redemption 1. So from a gameplay perspective, from a generational perspective, I recommend playing 1 first. Dre Orosero, I understand that as reviewers, you commit a level of respect regarding to the work that you and other people do. Steam allows players to recommend or not recommend a title given its current state. Just recently, Call of Duty Black Ops 4 reintroduced loot boxes and premium currencies to their game, where on release it had none. Due to the nature of games having constant updates and games media often quick to move on from game to game, isn't there a big disconnect on how players and games media consume content? Would you ever consider letting any of the allies do a don't skip on any of the games that have recently been updated, like Destiny 2, but you have reviewed? Or do you think there's a better way? If yes, what might that be? I don't know. This is an interesting topic. I will add this to takeaways, which is right there. We only have a couple more questions, actually. Again, short episode. Don't skip style recap video on evolutions to a new game. I think it might be fun to do that maybe at the end of every month, or maybe even at the end of the year, to look back at things that we have scored. And maybe I don't like the idea of changing scores, because I think it's fine if a score is kind of cemented in time, because it does represent that launch period, that time when this is when we were all buying this game. And so even though it's like, oh, that game is so much better, Rainbow Six Siege so much better now, Sea of Thieves so much better now, the improvement of that game is lost if you change the score. Then we can go back and say we updated our Sea of Thieves score because there's more content available now. Then you would look at that and be like, wow, this game launched with all that? And you're like, well, no, it didn't. It has that stuff now. And so that's why I like holding on to that original review score, because it is reflective of where that game was. And I never want to forget that. And I don't think people should forget that, because not only does that educate your purchasing decision on that game, but also speaks to what that developer did. It's like, say, imagine you knew nothing about No Man's Sky. You've been, living in a cave. You come out, you see a recent article that's like, No Man's Sky is great. And you're like, oh, great. And you get No Man's Sky. And then Hello Games goes, here, we're making a new game. Here's the next game from Hello Games. And you're like, oh, okay, well, No Man's Sky was great. I'm sure this game's going to be great. And then one of your friends is like, well, let me tell you a story about this company getting themselves in trouble as far as like making promises, and this whole saga that happened before you got involved with No Man's Sky. And I think review scores do a good job of representing that, of kind of, reminding us like what a game was like in its original state. But I definitely do think that there should be a case for going back and continuing the conversation about games after the fact, not like affecting that score, or making a video that's like, yeah, that review, forget that review. I never want to forget those reviews. I think reviews are very important to be remembered as far as representing the EZA holdup, says Bloodworth, as far as a show title. But it could be interesting, again, at the end of a month, to kind of look back and be like, what big changes happened this month? What games were in a different position at the beginning of this month that have improved or added things after the fact? Karsten Kohler, do you have any... Number one, Karsten talked a little bit about Leisure Suit Larry. I'm cutting right to the questions. Number one, do you have any idea why the Leisure Suit Larry games have such a bad reputation? Is this perhaps a result from the very bad games which were not made by Al Lowe? Possibly. I think Leisure Suit Larry is a very easy franchise to make fun of, And I think that's why. I think Larry makes fun of himself. The narrator makes fun of Larry. I think you just listen to the soundtrack for each game, and it's like there's just this whole attitude around every Leisure Suit Larry game that's like, don't take this seriously. Larry's just an idiot. And so I think the franchise kind of writes itself off in a comedic way, kind of like Naked Gun, but unfortunately, maybe that's had a negative effect on actually the stigma of Leisure Suit, that some of those games are very clever. Some of the writing is very funny. Obviously, Larry is objectifying women right and left. That is his mission statement. It's written on his business card, but there are some wonderful moments in Leisure Suit Larry games that I wish people could experience. Number 2, which of the Leisure Suit Larry games is your favorite one and why? My favorite one is Love for Sale. And I will tie that into question 3. Do you ever plan to revisit one of these games? I am. I'm currently replaying Love for Sale on my laptop, on my Mac laptop. I mean, not extensively. I don't know if I will finish it, but it's just kind of fun to go back to that game. When I first played Leisure Suit Larry Love for Sale, it was on a very old Mac laptop. The frame rate was very slow, and so it's fun to play it now and see it animate well. And I did play Magna Cum Laude, and I did not play Box Office Bust. And from what I hear, Wet Dreams Don't Dry, the new Leisure Suit Larry game, is not bad. Apparently it's really fun. And so I haven't seen negative sentiment toward it on social media from people that have played it, people that have actually checked it out, say it's pretty fun. Did you ever meet Al Lowe during your career? I did not. If he passed me on the street, I don't know if Al Lowe is still around. And if he is, and I walked past him, I would not know. If I sat next to him in a movie theater, I would not be aware. But I would give that man a hug and a shake, and I would say, fun games. Klaus Apfelquist. Klaus Apfelquist. Hopefully I got it right. Wanted to ask you if you feel that there's any truth to the idea that Kirby was chosen as sole survivor in the Smash World of Light trailer to honor Iwata, since he was at HAL when Kirby was made and even helped design the game, apparently. I hope it's true, and it brings the whole trailer and game mode into a whole new level, for me at least. Fun to think of. Don't know if we'll ever get that confirmation. I think since Sakurai was also involved in the creation of Kirby, I think Kirby's just his boy, his little brainchild, and so I think he wants to put Kirby in the spotlight whenever he gets the chance. Apple Crisp, not Apple Chris, Applequist. Don't make fun of me, Blood. I'm doing the best I can. I don't see you pronouncing any names. I want you, Blood, to come on here, and I want you to pronounce these names. I want everybody to submit silly names for Blood to pronounce, and we'll see if he gets them right. In the next episode of Cup of Jones. Man, almost done. Just right at the end of the episode, getting heat from Blood. So yeah, that would be fun. And maybe I'll do a small editorial on this next and final question. Ryan asks, how was Mega 64 Game Days? Please tell all. Takeaways for this episode: consider telling fans to rate our podcast highly on podcast services. 2v2 tournament with kids, kindergarten cop style, and a don't skip style recap video on evolutions to a new game in a certain amount of time. He hasn't had breakfast. Well, there you go. Well, I haven't had breakfast either, Blood. But I just want an apple crisp. See, okay, there we go. I don't have an apple crisp, but I got a blueberry smoothie. Not quite the same thing, but it'll have to do. Mega 64 Game Days. If you're unfamiliar with Mega 64, they are a group of people that does funny skits. They're kind of jackass-oriented. Not a lot of stunts, though. Not a lot of... They do run and crash into things on occasion, but I love and respect Mega 64 so much because they are so different from Game Trailers and Easy Allies. They're 3 people specifically, 3 guys that go and do all these bits. They do live events every now and then. They do produce shows that you get to see a little more of their personalities. But they do a lot of crazy albums, and there's DVD sets of Mega 64 stuff that you can see in the past. And Mega 64 used to be heavily involved in Game Trailers. We would show a lot of their content, a lot of their new stuff. We would use them. Hopefully it was beneficial to Mega 64 to use Game Trailers as a megaphone to let more people know about them. They do have a Patreon. It is very differently structured than our Patreon. Our Patreon primarily funds the work that we do. The Patreon that Mega 64 set up is just kind of on the side for them to make additional money. Mega 64 is one of the leaders, one of the people that I respect a lot when it comes to merch. The t-shirts that they produce, the posters, they have a plushie of one of the guys in the group, and Every time I go to Comic-Con, I know exactly where the booth is going to be every year. I always go straight to the booth and I'm like, hey guys, free shirt, yoink. They always give me a free shirt. And PAX, sometimes I steal a shirt. If you watch the latest episode of the Easy Allies podcast, you can see me wearing my brand new Mega 64 shirt. And this past weekend, they had what they call Game Days, which is their Disneyland event. It makes me jealous because I want to have my own Disneyland event of that size. They have like it's 200, 300 people show up to this event every single year. They take a picture in front of the castle that they can barely fit everyone in. I've been in that picture every single year. I can never see myself because I'm always in the back, just like, it's me. But I go to Mega 64 Game Days every year because I love those guys. I love that crew. And I tweeted out that I was going to be there. And what bummed me was I saw people that... like Gerard, the completionist, was there, and I totally missed him. And I felt bad because, and this is interesting, to be at other events, like I'll go to Kind of Funny events, I'll go to Mega 64 events, and I'm never quite sure if I should be there. It's like, this is a community event, really. Like, this is for them to meet their fans and to have a Disneyland day with their fans. And I feel bad. It's like, well, I'm here. And it's like, am I piggybacking on their event? Am I making this my own kind of personal Easy Allies meetup? Is that fair? Should I just... And so whenever I go to Game Days, they have two separate days. They have one that's the Disneyland day, and then they have another day that is at a nearby hotel. I don't know if it's the Disneyland hotel or where they have it, but they have their own little mini Mega 64 convention where they'll have panels and presentations and special guests and stuff. I don't go to that. I just go to the Disneyland day, and I just kind of run in. They give out a pin every year. I grab that pin. I meet the guys and say hi and wish them well, and then take off. So, but I could have met ProZD. I didn't meet ProZD. I didn't know he was there. I saw, again, Gerard took a picture with him later, and I was like, I didn't know that they were there. So I have a whole different opinion of Game Days now. I am not going to feel bad going there. I'm going to make a big loud noise and try to go and meet every single gaming celebrity that I possibly can that goes to Mega 64 Game Days. But if that sounds fun to you, if you're like, hey, I'm not a huge fan of Mega 64, but that sounds like a fun event and you want to check it out, it's at the beginning of November every year, and I never miss it, and I'm always there, so you can count on me being there. Just reach out to me on Twitter and let me know you're going to be there too. One ally did reach out to me that is a fan of Mega 64, and I did make sure to meet up with that ally, and we hung out and chatted about things, and it was fun. And it's Disneyland, so it's fun anyway. So there we go. Only an hour and 28 minutes, and of course the... actually, I'm such an idiot. I can just move this mouse, right? Yeah. I got up every single time not realizing that I could just move this mouse and wake this computer back up. But that's because the computer is being weird. We're having weird technical difficulties with our computer. Hopefully we fix this before the premiere of Box Peak Monday morning with Kyle Bossman and Amanda Troop, the finale of Season 1. I hope you will all join us. Bloodworth, I don't tend to wear a hat if I don't need to, but if I'm out in the sun, it's good to know that Hogue Law has me covered. Nice. Hogue says, that reminds me, have any of the allies worn any of that sweet Hogue Law merch on a stream? I know you wore the hat to the year's concert. I wanted to grab a screenshot. Yeah, if I remember Hogue, I will take pictures of us in that merch. The thing about the merch, unfortunately, is, as you can imagine, we are tight on space here in the garage. I believe the merch is either in my car or is in this closet behind me, and there's lots of stuff stacked on top of it. And so the merch is not something that we can just like open a drawer and pull that stuff out and put it on. I do know that hoodies have been worn, and Brent Phillips, who is a lovely patron, I believe a $25 patron of Easy Allies, and has been since we started, who built our website. I pay this guy to do things for us, and he gives us the money back through Patreon. And Brent's long been a friend of ours. Brent got one of the hoodies, and it is one of his favorite hoodies. I remember he brought it out at some event that we were at. He was like, I think I had given it to him, and he had left it in his car, and then we were at something, and he was like, man, I wish I had a sweater. And he's like, wait! He's like, I have a Hogue Law sweater. So he was very happy to read that. So you are a celebrity. The word is getting out, Hogue. We are trying to spread the good word of Hogue throughout the world. But yeah, I'm not going to let this crazy, unsynced PC falling asleep, circus show go on any further, we're going to wrap up this episode of Cup of Jones. Thank you so much for tuning in. Keep your fingers crossed that we get this studio and that I can begin next Thursday's Cup of Jones with some very, very exciting news. But if not, we will continue the search. There are other places that we looked at that were viable. I will speak a little more about those when we know we didn't get this place, because there are actually some people that I want to thank that have been instrumental in providing new opportunities for us when considering a studio space. But just please, I want to get this space. I want to move in. Oh, and just to give you an idea of potentially how that worked out. So say, everything lucks out and we do get the space. December 1st would be probably our first month of paying rent. And we would then have to not only move everything in, but we would have to set up lights, and we would have to set up all the equipment, and we would have to build sets specifically. We probably wouldn't move any equipment in until we built sets. So not only would that mean that Easy Allies would probably go dark for at least a full week, if not 2 weeks, but if December 1st was our first month of rent, then we would probably not actually shoot or stream or publish anything from the studio until January. So even if I show up next week and it is late November and let you know, hey, we got the studio space, you probably wouldn't see anything come out of the studio space until 2019. But that means we could potentially have Goaties in there. That means we could potentially have a tournament be one of our first streams. Oh no, I'm almost done!
Are you rapping?
I'm almost done! Oh no! I was literally like saying the last thing, and then I was finished. We're up late doing PC stuff. I gotta sleep.
Here, you just go there. I'll wrap it up. Okay, so thanks for watching Cup of Jones. I'm your host, Amanda Troop. And, yeah, you know, I answered questions that you asked, and, they were good answers. Mostly good. There was that one thing I did with the apple crisp. Little dubious. Yep, gonna work on that. But otherwise, enjoy. Cheers, everybody.